Our world today is much different than at any other time in human history. Throughout human history, most societies were structured with a monarchial form of government and a common religion as the guiding force of that government and its people. Such concepts as freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and freedom of expression were basically non-existent. Of course, this is such a foreign concept to us today that we feel it must have been 1,000 years ago, but in reality, it was only a few generations ago. In fact, this was the case throughout Europe and the rest of the world until the later part of the 19th through the middle of the 20th centuries, when a series of revolutions and wars toppled the long-standing royal houses, setting up democratic republics in their place. We are told that this all happened naturally, that the people rose up against those oppressive dynasties, but the reality is this was done by a behind-the-scenes organization called Freemasonry. It began with the American Revolution, then the French Revolution, then throughout all of Europe with a planned massive European war to finish it off that we call World War I. And during that conflict, the Freemasons worked behind the scenes to overthrow the biggest of them all, Russia. Sounds silly? Maybe a little too conspiratorial? Well, let me ask you something. Why was World War I fought? We know why World War II was fought. The Nazis taking over Europe, Pearl Harbor, Vietnam, the communists started taking over. The first Iraq War, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. The second Iraq War, weapons of mass destruction, although that one's questionable. With every other war, there's always a clear reason, but not this one. Here we are told a relative nobody shot and killed an archduke. But since that doesn't satisfactorily answer why the most widespread and bloody conflict up to that point in all of human history was fought, we are always given some confusing series of unfortunate events that even the academics can't agree on. Because it makes no sense unless you realize that it was orchestrated by a secret behind-the-scenes organization who wanted to use it to restructure the world. Order out of chaos. Oh, and by the way, that man who shot and killed the Archduke was in fact a Freemason. So even in the official narrative, it's the Freemasons' fault. Unfortunately, World War I left many power vacuums that the Freemasons were not able to fill sufficiently. So we ended up with World War II. But in the end, they were able to use that war to put the final nail in the coffin of Christendom. And our Freemasonic world was born with the establishment of the United Nations. Now, I'm going to address the elephant in the room. Yes, that elephant. Some people are now screaming at me through their screens, and I'm sure I'll get comments on this video asking why I'm not mentioning a certain religious ethnic group. Well, there are two reasons. One, I question everything. I don't automatically believe anything I see on the news, social media, or anywhere else, whether from the left or the supposed right. It's nothing but propaganda on both sides of the political spectrum. But what I do believe in is the approved apparitions of Jesus and Mary. That's my litmus test. Jesus sent his mother 400 years ago to warn us about the 20th century, and she came all throughout the 20th century warning us about what is and what is about to happen. Not once did she say, it's this religious ethnic group. She said, it's the Freemasons and communists. At Quito, Ecuador in the 16th century, concerning the 20th century, Our Lady said, "Thus I make it known to you that from the end of the 19th century and from shortly after the middle of the 20th century, the passions will erupt and there will be a total corruption of customs. For Satan will reign almost completely by the means of the Masonic sects. They will focus principally on children in order to sustain this general corruption. Woe to the children of these times." And as for the sacrament of matrimony, which symbolizes the union of Christ with his church, it will be attacked and deeply profaned. Freemasonry, which will then be in power, will enact iniquitous laws with the aim of doing away with this sacrament, making it easy for everyone to live in sin and encouraging the procreation of illegitimate children born without the blessing of the church. And of course, at Fatima, she said that Russia would spread her errors, which is communism. So as far as I'm concerned, that's where the problem lies, Freemasonry and communism. Heaven seems to be more concerned with ideology than ethnicity. 2. I started going down that rabbit hole a couple of years ago. But on New Year's Day this year, the priest at Mass suggested to the congregation a website that randomly generates the name of a saint. He told us to use it once, and whatever saint it gives you is your saint for the year. Well, I got Sarah Salkahalzi. Ever heard of her? Neither had I. She was killed by the Nazis for helping those religious ethnic people. I felt that God was telling me something. So I'm just not going to go there. Others are screaming at me saying, my dad's a Freemason, my grandfather, and my uncle. And I too have had family members and friends who were and are members of Freemasonic organizations. I'm not saying all Freemasons are bad. At least in America, they aren't sitting around plotting the overthrow of the government. They already did that 250 years ago. And most Masons today don't know what the plans are at the top of the organization. They join for business contacts or to serve their community. But that's not to say that's the way it is all over the world. As recently as the late 1970s, the Italian Masonic Lodge P2 was caught infiltrating the Vatican Bank and the Italian government. It was so bad the entire government of Italy had to be scrapped and reorganized. Now you might say, okay, so Freemasons are behind changing the Western world from Christian rule to freedom. Isn't that a good thing? Today, Freemasons proudly admit they are the ones who are behind all these revolutions, because those events are now perceived as a good thing. But the next phase seems to be to take all of that away and establish communist rule. There would be no communism without Freemasonry. Of course, we see all these things happening, and people think the established political structure of left and right, liberal and conservative, is the answer, but they're wrong. They set up the structure to give us the illusion of choice. Both sides are in on it. Look up who is a Freemason, and you'll see Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative. It doesn't matter. It's why we, quote, conservatives won most of the political battles and somehow lost the war. So no, Donald Trump is not coming to save us. Ron DeSantis is not coming to save us. The problem is the system. It's too easily manipulated, and it was designed that way on purpose. As long as Christians look to the system to solve the problem, they will continue to be led to the slaughter, regardless of who wins elections. So, should we not vote? Whether you vote or not is up to you. I personally still vote Republican because it's the lesser of the two evils and it does slow the progress. Should we take up arms and overthrow the system? If you want to get you and your family killed, will dying for freedom save your soul? This isn't 1776. 1776 was not about establishing freedom. It was about establishing Freemasonry. It wasn't about rights for Christians. It was about rights from Christian rule. It doesn't apply, so get that out of your head. It took the Freemasons 200 years to set this new world up, and they have much better weapons now that no resistance can match, as well as surveillance to root out any secret gatherings. Any rebellion will be crushed like a bug. The correction won't be done by human efforts. God will make things right through a divine chastisement, which will be very terrible, as all the Catholic prophecies have said. All we can do is pray the rosary. Our Lady said at Akita in the 1970s, if men don't repent and better themselves, the Father will inflict a terrible punishment on all humanity. It will be a punishment greater than the deluge, which is the flood, such as no one has ever seen before. Fire will fall from the sky and will wipe out a great part of humanity, the good as well as the bad, sparing neither priest nor faithful. The survivors will find themselves so desolate that they will envy the dead. The only arms which will remain for you will be the rosary and the sign left by my Son. Each day recite the prayers of the rosary. And Jesus said at St. Nicholas, previously the world was saved through Noah's ark. Today the ark is my mother. By means of her, souls will be saved because it will bring them towards me. Whoever rejects my mother rejects me. A flood-like event is coming, and this Freemasonic world is about to perish. It's not the end of the world. It's not the second coming. It's a correction. And on the other side of it is the triumph of the Immaculate Heart, the heir of peace, and return to Christendom. Catholic Church in charge, Christendom. There will be no Freemasonry or communism. There will be no Protestantism or schism. There will be no Islam or other religions. There will be no democracies or republics. There will only be the Catholic Church, which will have been purified from the filth currently infecting it, and the Catholic monarchy. Until my next video, God bless.